Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the greatest rock and roll stories in the universe, all from the fans' perspective. It's Rock Stories with the Brumster. Now, here's the host of the show, my rockin' daddy, the Brumster.
Thank you. Welcome to the show. What's happening? I am the Brumster. You can check me out every single Rockin' Your Drive home every Friday. The Hard Drive at 5 with the Brumster at rockradio559.com. And then, of course, Rock Stories with the Brumster at rockradio559.com every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on the weekly. And you can catch all of these awesome Rock Stories with the Brumster episodes on demand at the Brumster. That's 2 M's, just like the candy, 2 M's. If it's 1 M, get out of Dodge. I'm the real deal. The Brumster Spotify channel. The cool thing about Spotify, it's only $9.99, and you also can get access to the music and some of the cool rockin' playlists that I include as well at the Brumster channel, along with Real Rock Stories with the Brumster, which is why we're here today. Thanks for joining us for a new episode of Rock Stories with the Brumster. It's behind the scenes rock stories from the fans' perspective. That's right. We always get the cool episodes with the cool old rockers, from days past who were cruising along, singing a song, visiting this, checking that out, looking at this piece of memorabilia, talking about the memories, all that good stuff. But being in radio since the 90s, it's given me an opportunity to become friends with so many different cool people who have great rock and roll concert, band, artist experiences. From their perspective as fans, behind the scenes, pull back the curtain, and that's what we do here. One of the best episodes that we've had so far on Rock Stories with the Brumster is Aunt Sue. That's right, my Aunt Sue. She's the super fan from a long time ago, and she's still the same beautiful, awesome super fan today, and the ultimate Beatles fan, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. I'll let her go into some of these cool behind-the-scenes rock stories. She was with us on a previous episode from SoFi Stadium for the inaugural concert, the first concert on the tour of the Rolling Stones at the No Filter Tour opener at SoFi Stadium. So she called in to Rock Stories with the Brumster from there, told some cool stories. And I'm like, you're a treasure trove, Aunt Sue. You need to come back on the show. There's so much more we can talk about. Aunt Sue, welcome back. You are the rock goddess. Welcome back to Rock Stories with the Brumster. What's happening?
Oh, Josh, you just made my day, my week, my month. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's fun to be here. You are the rockinest nephew in the whole wide world, too. This is good stuff.
I want to rock. And you actually do that, like, for real life. Like that, you have a real job and all that. But I mean, in all reality, you live and you breathe rock and roll. Ever since I was a little kid and I would see you cruising around town and, walk into the store and you'd pull up at a light. Hey, what's up, Aunt Sue? Oh my God, you rock.
In my Mustang, no less. I would pull up in my Mustang, okay?
That is too cool, man. I was raised right in the world of rock and roll. And
that's right.
So you just got back from jolly old England, right? You just
yes.
So what did you do while you were there? What was the purpose? I'm sure it was rock and roll related.
Well, it was Paul McCartney at his finest. He just released his autobiography called The Lyrics. It's a 2-volume book that was released, and he had a special night, like a conversation with McCartney in Southgate Center, and they only sold 2,700 tickets worldwide. So my friends, my fellow fans on the run, peeps, Germany, New York, and Brazil. We all got tickets and we met up and we spent an evening with Paul McCartney, him talking about his book. It was amazing.
It's kind of like back in the day when you'd go to Borders or Barnes and Noble or something and there'd be someone there, signing their book. It's intimate like that, right? It's not like the big long line out in front of the department store and you're just trying to get a quick signature, right? Like it's intimate. It's like you're kicking it there. Only, what would you say, like 2,700 people or something like that?
Yeah, and it was, the theater was arranged in such where I was in the 10th row and I was just as close to him in the 10th row in this small theater as I would have been front row in a live concert with him because of the barriers and the big riser that he has and all that. So it was crazy. Plus, it's been 2 years since we've seen him. So it was like being 15 all over again. You didn't exhale the whole time. It was just so cool. And he's so beautiful.
And he looked down there and he goes, there's Sue. Right there.
He did that when he drove in. There was just 10 of us. We knew the little secret. There was hundreds of people waiting at another that they thought he was going to enter, but we know because we're fans on the run. And we were there when he drove in the secret entrance, and he rolled the window down, and he had the biggest look. It was like a kid at Christmas time having a bike under the tree. He was so surprised, and he acknowledged each one of us. We got his video, and he waved, and we had a sign that says "Fans on the Run love you," and it was just so special. So it was like, yeah, we're back, Paul. It was the greatest.
I have so much respect for him. I respected him at an unbelievable level my whole life, and then suddenly I'm watching this 3-part documentary series on Disney Plus, Get Back, Fly on the Wall. You're like a fly on the wall, right? Like, it's a whole nother level of respect for his musical genius and his leadership. He had to take over for Brian Epstein, right?
Well, he didn't have to, but he's a leader. He's a natural leader. Yeah. So he just assumed that role because he's a genius. He is a perfectionist. He's a performer. He wanted to keep the music going, where the other ones were just having a good time. But he's hardcore. To this day, he is amazing. And to hear him talk about, and so between seeing him talk about the lyrics and then seeing the lyrics come to life in Get Back, because back in the 70s when Let It Be, the original film, was released, I saw the premiere of that in LA, and it was dark and dank and dreary, and we're still grieving the Beatles breaking up, and all that, and so it painted a negative picture, and it was like a total evolution to see Get Back, what Peter Jackson did and how, the gift that he gave us to see the whole birthing process, from inception. It was just like amazing to see these geniuses at work. I was, and I'm not a music genius. All I know is that they are wonderful, and that just solidified it for the whole world to appreciate. I hope the whole world can appreciate that.
I sure did. Get Back on Disney Plus, still available. Check it out. I know you bought your own copy.
Well, it's a bootleg. We won't talk about that one.
Fans on the Run. Fans on the Run, by the way. I want to talk a little bit more about Paul, about how, watching that, it's obvious to all. There's an actual side conversation when George temporarily splits and quits, and he comes back, but when he splits, they're sitting around talking, and they get emotional, talking about how they should do, Paul's like, maybe we should do some, or maybe, and then John was doing the same thing, just maybe we should do some sort of like, newsman goes to this story, to that story, and now the Beatles are no longer a band. And all of a sudden it just got, a pin could drop, and they all got teared up, and they're just like, They really loved each other. It proves, this whole film, that Yoko was not the reason for the split. It proves in this film.
No. I have to disagree with that. It proves in this film, because Yoko is a co-producer of this film, and Yoko will never let anything be released that makes him look bad. So, yeah, there's a little bit of jealousy in there, but I'm sorry. The Beatles have had a pact since the beginning of time. It's all for one and one for all. So if it is not a unanimous decision, it doesn't happen. So she's the one that held back Ron Howard from putting out 8 days a week for so long, because it had to be a unanimous 4-way decision, and so it happened. So she may be old, but she's not stupid, and she's not going to let herself look at anything negative. So yeah, it made Yoko look like wonderful. Yeah, I mean, she held the coin purse on that thing.
Oh, interesting. Because the view I have when they're in the big TV studio is they're all talking amongst themselves. Yoko's not even in the mix, and Paul is the one saying, when being asked by some of the personnel there, about Yoko and what does she have to do, kind of like feeding the fuel in the fire a little. And Paul's like acknowledging, yeah, she's weird, and yeah, it's kind of odd to have someone, have so much pull in a situation, but we've all got our love connections, and we've all got that in our lives, and no, that's not the problem here. And like, that's what Paul was saying, but he was really just being polite. I guess from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, Yoko was a little bit more of a thorn than I realized.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say a thorn, but she was having a heavy influence on John. And like Paul said, they're in love, they want to be together, but it was like the perfect storm. John was getting heavier into drugs. Yoko was there pulling his strings. She was supplying the drugs. I mean, there's all kinds of books that are written and talk about the dealer that comes into Abbey Road and makes sure that he doesn't go without. I mean, that whole gig. And that's a reoccurring theme throughout their relationship too. But Paul, he understood both sides of the story, and it was good, bad, and the ugly is why the Beatles broke up. So you could never, everybody's going to have their perspective, and there's no definitive, this point in time, everything just, went to hell. It was, just like everything, even like a divorce. It isn't, there's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but it was something that was weakening, that camel all along to make it go snap.
Right. So
the same thing happened with the Beatles. It was just a progression of events, an evolution of their personalities and their music styles, and the times, and the drugs had a big influence on it. I mean, so there's just a lot of things you can never. So Yoko's not to blame, but she's not innocent either, because if it wouldn't have been Yoko, it would have been something else. But she was very controlling, and she had a plan from the get-go. And, so Yoko would never be a name to be on the media today if she had not married John Lennon. She'd still be a nobody.
Right.
So
right,
whatever.
Yeah. Hold on a second. John, I'd like to do a song on the album where I just scream. What the hell is that? For real? Art.
That's artistic expression. That's not streaming. Are you kidding? Yoko would never call it streaming.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit here in the corner and talk into a pillow. And that's going to, what? What are you talking? Hello? Yeah, I guess there were a lot of drugs involved. Hey, the band, I'm telling you, they really did love each other, though. And when that whole recording session came to fruition and they got up on top of they figured out that the roof, was able to support their weight finally. They got up there. The police are trying to you've got to shut this thing down. And they're up there and trying to get everyone to shut it down. And the second they all lock eyes and realize the cops are there, they all got happy. They were all like, yeah, baby.
I know. Wasn't that the greatest? Paul especially, he got a little twinkle in his eyes, like, yeah. Yeah, that was great. That was the greatest moment. Rooftop is my favorite concert, even more so. Well, I mean, I saw them at Hollywood Bowl in '65, but Rooftop says it all. They're so perfect. They're so on the spot. You know, it's crazy too, because all the clunking and picking and hitting and missing that they were doing throughout the film as they would show it. Like, are we ever going to get this together? And, you know, and Paul told him, like, hey, you know, when push comes to shove, and bam, they performed. They were on the money. Oh, they were rocking it. And considering how freeing it was trying to play their instruments and sing with the wind, and I mean, that was an amazing moment.
Yeah, George even said that, because that's something that was really important to him, was just living in the moment and not trying to overplan anything. That what's supposed to happen was a recurring theme of his throughout the Get Back movie. You know, watching that, I saw that a lot with him. And at the very end, when they're listening to it back and he's smiling and he's going, we couldn't have even done that if we tried. Like,
yeah.
You know, we got the best result and it was all on accident. Isn't, like, wow, the best result on accident. I mean, talk about from the artist heart, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the energy was so strong too. And that's why it was, to me, it was the best of times. The energy, you could not redo that. It was amazing. And didn't you just love Billy Preston? How he just walked in and just started hitting the keys, and he made that album. I mean, it was like amazing.
You nailed it. And they all were like John said, we were flailing until you showed up. Like, we were going downhill, and then you just came in and breathed new life. And then Billy Preston takes off, and they all have a discussion like, how are we going to do this? If he was a session musician, we'd have to pay him. He'd be demanding, but he's just coming in and playing. So if he just keeps coming in and playing and not asking for anything, you know, what do you say we do? I say we just put his name on the album. And that's what they actually did that, huh? Like, they respected him so much, and and Billy did save their bacon. That was a fact that, you know, was kind of untold until now, huh?
Yeah, totally. And that's what I love about Paul having Paul Wickens with him in his band ever since, you know, Wings days, and to this day. Those keyboards make it. You know, I love Paul tearing out that guitar, but man, when he hits those keyboards, it just makes every song. I think that's just my heart, my soul just loves the keys.
Well, and he stood up to John without even stopping that beautiful Billy Preston smile. You know, John was like saying that we need to tune the electric piano, and he looks at John. You don't tune an electric piano, John.
That was a good one, huh?
Right. And
poor Billy.
Well, everyone else is just like, oh my God, did he just talk to John Lennon like that? And then John Lennon's like, oh, okay. Like, in other words, you're in our world now, Billy. You're in our world now.
Totally. Yeah, it was the best. And didn't you just love Ringo, just Mr. Chill himself, just taking it all in? He didn't even really roll his eyes. He just kind of closed them, and he just rolled with the punches. He's just so amazing. And to see him evolve today, man, his newest album is better than anything he's ever put out. He is amazing. But he really stood that whole, you know, the friction that was going on. He was like almost a silent glue to the what was happening between the two of them.
You know that, right? Because Paul, having to run the show and kind of manage it musically, is directing everything. George is getting ticked off, telling Paul, like, you never stop and correct yourself during, you know, Hey Jude, and this kind of friction back and forth. John's chiming in, Yoko's chiming in with her screaming, and then, between all of this, you've got Ringo just sitting there with his sticks, and at a moment's notice, he just knows right when to start with the beat and go, okay, yeah, all right, okay. And it's like no one has to tell him anything. I don't remember Paul having to direct him once.
Paul has, on occasion, I've seen some clips. He'll sit down at the drums, or he'll say, "Why don't we try this sort of thing?" But he really does stand off. He lets Ringo do his thing. Seldom will he. But I thought it was cute because each took their turns on the drums. It's like a fun thing. And then, Ringo, they all play keyboard too. That's what was so cool about it. They're just so multi-talented.
Yeah, you mentioned that how a lot of artists who don't even play the drums on their actual albums, that's not their main instrument. They still love playing the skins. Like Steve Perry, yeah. I heard loves playing drums, even though you never see him on the drums. So you were at Apple Studio. We're a fly on the wall virtually through Get Back, the new docuseries on Disney Plus, and that's so cool to be a fly on the wall that way. But you actually walked in, between these walls. You were just on this trip recently, right? You were at Apple Studio. Talk about that.
I was. Well, and if I could just interject, right before the day after Paul, we, my Fans on the Run friends, we rented a car and we drove 2 hours to Peasmarsh, which is right on the coast, the east coast of England, where Paul has his home. And so we found that, and obviously we couldn't go. The security guard was there, but then we went down the road to Hog Hill Studios, which is his recording studio, overlooking the ocean right there, where all that music has been recorded through all these years. I mean, it's like famous. So we were there. We were able to walk on the hill, the actual house and mill were in a fenced area that we couldn't, but we walked all around, took lots of pictures. So it was like really cool to keep connecting the dots, And then the next day is when I went to Abbey Road Studios. It was their 90th anniversary, and they were having a tour/lecture session. It was a 90-minute lecture, and oh gosh, I just forgot the two guys' names. They're American guys, and they're like about your age, and they wrote a book all about the history of Abbey Road. It was amazing. I learned so much because before Abbey Road it was EMI, and then before EMI it was Parlophone. And so they showed the history going back to the 1800s, the invention of vinyl LPs and the Parlophone, the player, and how all those are connected, the forefathers of Abbey Road.
So long before the Beatles, Abbey Road's been a heckin' ever since. Alan Parsons.
Oh my God!
Alan Parsons was. I saw him noted that was Alan Parsons, skinny Alan Parsons. Eye in the sky, folks, right? He was a producer. He was there helping out while the Beatles were recording, but also he recorded with Pink Floyd. And I mean, there's a lot of history there. So even before the Beatles, going all the way back to just the beginnings of vinyl, if you will, in the studio there. Wow, what history. And you got to get that
it was amazing.
Firsthand.
Yeah, it was so cool. And then, before the lecture happened, you were free to go through the studio where it all happened. That we were sitting in the studio, and that's where the screen was for the video presentation. And it's all around the room. They had the instruments lined up with little placards on it saying what was the name of the instrument, what it was used for, and what song. Even these are the chairs that the Beatles sat in. This is the piano that they played in Day in the Life of, and this is what they used in Strawberry Fields. And it was just like right there, the history. I got to walk up these stairs that went into the control booth with all the big control stuff. But the original controls were on display on the floor in the studio. They have a much more modern setup in there. So I was taking pictures and talked to the engineers that were in there. And then there's a room that was off the building itself that was really used for the plumbing of the building, and it had big pipes in it, and it was just a big concrete room. And so the guy's telling the story, and this was the room that like John discovered one day. Hey, what's in here? And like, hey, this would be really cool for echo. So they used it for music, for recording when they needed an echo. So that little we were in there and they were playing music, and we got to do a videotape and all that stuff too. It was fun. But
wow.
It was amazing. So that was, yeah, I mean, there were certain places that we weren't allowed to go into for the tour, but yeah, to be in that room, and that was even more special. And to learn the stuff that they did, because they did a lot of tidbits of information on how things were recorded and how they discovered a lot of the sounds that are used today were invented by the Beatles and were perfected by engineers that said, okay, now we've got to figure out how we're going to do this. And so, and George Martin, was right there hand in hand with them. And then even before that, EMI Studios and Parlophone, I think a lot of the stuff that we have in the recording industry today and the sounds and all that are because they were invented and perfected there. It just has an amazing history.
Roll the tape, right? Yeah. Hey, Brumster,
right.
Here with Aunt Sue. It's Rock Stories with the Brumster. Spotify channel on the Brumster Spotify channel, as well as 11 a.m. every Sunday at rockradio559.com. Real rock stories from the fans' perspective. You don't get, stories like this from anywhere else. It's so cool to watch those shows with the actual stars talking. But why don't you look at it from the fans' perspective? I told myself, right? Me, myself, and I, right, Aunt Sue? So why not do that? So that's why we started this show. There's so many cool things that you don't hear about. And I think fans would love to be able to come along virtually, Theater of the Mind, and follow along on a fan's adventure. And that's exactly what you're doing. Thank you for being here. This is awesome. You're mentioning, some of the high tech equipment. Like we watched the old Star Trek, and that was high tech, But going back then, roll the tape. Back then, EMI did not even have what they felt was a good enough recording device, and so I think they even brought in George Harrison's own personal. I think it was an 8-track. Machine, right? They had to roll that in and tie it into their own system. Although EMI obviously developed and built the industry and so many technologies we have today. But that goes to show how hands-on and technically savvy the Beatles themselves were for George to actually bring that solution to the table.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Amazing, for sure. It was funny too because the night before when we went to Paul's house, he just lives around the corner from Abbey Road, and we were just walking, and we went out in front of Abbey Road. So because there's a 24-hour cam, you can wave, to people that are on the website, and you can wave to them from the crosswalk, the zebra crosswalk there in front of Abbey Road. And Niles Rogers had been recording. He came walking out, and I got him on videotape and said hi. Just so happens, yeah.
Just so happens. I love that. I love that. That impromptu nature of Aunt Sue, rock goddess here today, super fan, rock stories with the Brumster. Thank you, Aunt Sue. You rock. So this is the most recent adventure, but talk about it, maybe a couple other. You've been on a lot of these fun adventures. I know you just saw Foo Fighters, and you got a lot of cool adventures you've been on. Let's talk about some of these other cool adventures.
Okay, you got all day?
Right, hold on a second. Volume 5. No, go ahead.
Use this for my eulogy. So where do you want to go next? Do you want to go back in time, 1965, or you want to talk about Fans on the Run? What do you want to do?
Let's tie this in to Paul McCartney. Watching Graham Norton's show the other day, I see Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, formerly Nirvana folks. For those of you in Rio Linda, Dave Grohl is like the ultimate rocker, and he's real. He's the real deal. I love what he says, great for all these singing shows and stuff, but imagine Bob Dylan coming up before Simon and Paula and everyone. Oh, you sound a little pitchy, Bob. It's no, I love Dave Grohl. He's on Graham Norton's show, and he's telling about a personal experience where he became best buddies. He and his wife became buddies with Paul McCartney and his wife, and So Paul McCartney comes over and has dinner. They're having pizza and wine and hanging out. And Paul McCartney goes over and sits down at the piano, just couldn't help himself at Dave's house, and started teaching Dave's daughter how to play a song. And oh my gosh, you just got done. So we're tying Paul and Dave Grohl together here, folks, from a fan's perspective. They're buddies. And I think that Paul gets that vibe from Dave that he used to get with the Beatles, kind of like reinvigorates him almost. And wow, he's like a young dude again, basically.
Oh my God, you should see it the first time. Because a lot of time by the way, I've seen Paul 118 times, so kind of like a sidebar there. But one of the times that I saw Paul, Dave Grohl joined him on stage, and all of his band just were like, I guess you can't say pissing themselves, right? That's not cool. But anyway, it was like that. It was like amazing. Everybody had a heart attack. And I know they had rehearsed it and all that, but when Dave hit the stage, the energy was like quadrupled a bajillion times. They went nuts. And it was like as if George and John and Ringo had joined Paul on the stage. It was off the hook. You couldn't touch it. It was so amazing. And Dave did, I saw her standing there. He said, he did Get Back. I mean, it was off the hook amazing. And I've seen Dave on stage with Paul probably 4 times now. They love Dave. Dave loves them. They have a mutual respect, but the energy just goes off the chart when he steps on that stage with Paul. They are like brothers. It is like having John reincarnated, I'm telling you.
That is so cool.
And I love Dave anyway. He's just the coolest dude. He is amazing. I don't know if you got his book, Storyteller, but he's a writer too. He has an excellent writing style, but he's just a good guy, and just the energy that he brings is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago on the E! Network, Chelsea Handler's show was on at that time, and so my wife had that on for a second. That was a show she checked out, and I didn't really didn't dislike her, but didn't really like her comedy that much, and so I was gonna pass. And then I'm like, who's that dude? Where's Chelsea? Dave Grohl filled in for her for like 2 weeks, and
oh my God, I would love that.
It was like the best show. It kicked butt. It was way better than I remember it with like Chelsea. I'm like, wow, this guy should have his own show. He's really good.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you can catch that on YouTube or something. I would love to see that.
His personality comes out because it's so real. That's why it's important. Like when I do this show, Rock Stories with the Brumster on Spotify and rockradio559.com. When I do this show, I'm the Brumster, but you've known me. You're my godmother. You've known me since I was a baby.
Yeah.
So you this is the real me. Like people are getting the real Brumster. I'm not some put on character. Yeah, I've been in radio for 20 something years, and so I've got a voice that's gone through all that experience, etc. On hosting a show and stuff like that. But the personality you're getting is really who I am. And that's
right.
And that's why Dave, I think, is so successful, is he decided I'm going to be me. Good, bad, or the ugly. And I don't see much ugly. Dude's just shining like crazy. It pays off to be authentic. And Dave,
oh yeah,
right? Dave Grohl lives that for real. You just saw the Foo Fighters in Fresno, or how was that?
Oh yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh. I had the greatest seat. I was on the side of the stage where the band came and went. And I was right there at the bleachers, right parallel to the stage. So I had a direct view. So obviously the people in the front get the front view, but I got the side, and he came over the side a lot. But his energy was off the hook. And then I got a special video because the opening band for him were Killer Birds, and it was their last night show with touring with Foo Fighters, and he dedicated that song to her, and he went over and got on his knees and, knelt down, not on his knee, knelt down and did this total guitar riff for her. And I mean, it doesn't get any hotter than that. Of course, his wife is standing right behind her, but it's all cool. But the energy between him and his drummer, Taylor, oh my God, is like, I caught it a couple of times on video because they're like, brothers from different mothers, or I mean, they're just amazing. The two of them together, and they traded spots for a couple of songs too. And Taylor did Freddie Mercury, the "Find Somebody to Love," and he did the "Hey oh" thing, but instead he gets Fresno. It was fun. And the crowd, that was like perfect. Everybody cracked up. And then he did a breakdown, and sorry, Tom Petty fans, but Foo Fighters killed it with breakdown. Oh my God, it's so awesome. And then Hero. Oh my gosh, you can't touch that song. But it was really cool because of the generations in the crowd, and he was saying that he did a little bit of his early stuff, even Nirvana stuff. He says, and if you people out there don't know the words of this song, look for a bald 50-something-year-old man next to you, and he's singing the words. I thought that was cool.
Fighting the Foo, man. Fight the Foo. We fight the Foo here. Aunt Sue fighting the Foo. I love it.
Right on.
So,
the first time, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the times that, so I was following Paul on tour in 2013, and I was in Europe, and we were in Verona, Italy. And that day I was looking for Wi-Fi. I couldn't get a good Wi-Fi connection. And I met this guy that ran a video store. And it just so happened he was the Foo Fighters Italian fan club president. Okay? And I had a Paul McCartney shirt on. So we automatically clicked. And he's just a youngster, right? And so he takes me all around Verona, and he's showing me the sights and introduced me to people, his people, and I loved it. It was great. And then we went to the hotel where the band was staying, and maybe Paul, we weren't sure. And on the way there, we ran into Rusty, Paul's guitarist, and Brian Ray, his other guitarist, on two different occasions walking in the streets of Verona. And when we met up with Brian just like, because he recognized me from being in the front rows all the time. And so we started talking, and so Marco, the Italian guy, introduced himself as the Foo Fighter fan club, and Brian just goes, "Dave Grohl," and they go like this, like, and all of us just kind of disappeared. They were like in their element, totally separate from this universe. Foo Fighters, and it was the coolest thing. And this youngster Italian dude loved Paul McCartney and the Beatles because Dave Grohl turned him on, and then vice versa. And I thought that is the coolest. This whole generational thing, and they just had this instant connection. It was really cool to see it happen.
Right.
But you see it on stage too when Dave joins them. It's the same electrifying connection.
It's a mutual respect that cannot be denied. It's just there.
Absolutely.
So, fans on the run, front row all the time. Let's go into that. Fans on the run. Aunt Sue, you're not even like the fan on the run. There are many fans on the run. Talk a little bit about this special club that you and a few other souls belong to. It's awesome.
Yeah, you don't pay any dues, but let me tell you, you pay your dues because that's what it is. You're just always there, and so our fearless founder, his name is Rick Glover. He lives in Alabama. And this dude, he's your hookup too for rock and roll. He has been following rock and roll. He's a little bit younger than I am since it was born. And he has gone to every, Chris lives on the East Coast. He has a lot of exposure to a lot of music. But yeah, he's the one. And he just started showing up every concert with the Fans on the Run, and Paul acknowledged him. When I met him the first time when I saw Paul in Hollywood Bowl in 2000, 10? Yeah, 2010, 2009. Yeah, and so, like Paul said hi to him from the stage, like, dude, who are you? So that's what it is. It's just like you just show up and you're always there for limo watch. You're there for sound check. You're there. You've got your VIP tickets, so you sell your firstborn, to get those seats, and you're there, and you're just a part of it. And Paul acknowledges us. And I remember one tour that we did in the UK. My event travel, my ticket people, they put us all together. So we're always like second, third, or fourth row center, which is perfect. First row is for Paul's family, unless you crash it, which I've done a few times. But it's really been awesome. And Paul welcomes us. He says, my family, my special friends, and he acknowledges us. But the coolest thing was in 2014 when he did his U.S. tour, the Candlestick Park they were going to tear it down. Remember that?
Yes.
And they saved the teardown for the last concert to be Paul's, because that was the last Beatles concert. So it was very significant that he could play Candlestick for the last time. And we got a special invite if we could fill up the third row center section. And there was 30 of us from all over the world. People, fans in the run are from all over, South America, Mexico, Europe, Russia, Canada, UK, Spain, France, everywhere. And it's the most awesome group of people. And we were third row center, all of us. And we all held up a letter that said Fans on the Run. And when Paul sang Band on the Run, we held up our letters. And he took his guitar like a machine gun, a shot of Pam, and he changed the chorus from Band on the Run to Fans on the Run. And you can hear it on YouTube. So cool.
Totally legitimizing what is basically an organic.
Yes.
It's all organic. This isn't, something from the top down. Some manager somewhere said, hey, let's organize something called Fans on the Run. No, this is just real fans who love the Beatles, John, Paul McCartney, love rock and roll, and love people, right? Yeah, just the coolest people you've met on these adventures, huh?
And what I love about these people, they're all different sizes and shapes, different persuasions, different ages. Oh my gosh, there's young ones. They're like my grandkids' age. They're in their 20s, all the way up. I'm one of the older ones, 70s. But shoot, man, it is so cool. We bring our kids, our grandkids, and the love. It just is amazing. And so it is beyond special. And we get together. And then within that, we have some closer cliques. So like I said, when I went on this trip to England, there's in fact, I just Zoomed with my 2 New York friends. We Zoom every Monday. And then, and so my friends from Brazil and Germany were a little bit closer than some. But it is. We are family. And the love that we have. And not everybody is, Paul wasn't their favorite. Like, I'm a John girl that loves Paul. And I keep doing this because Paul keeps John alive. It's real. There's no past tense when it comes to the Beatles. It's current.
Right. You feel that spirit when you're there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're blessed.
And being from Hanford, California, shifting gears, I can't help but every single time I drive on the 198 headed into Hanford and I look over on the left-hand side and I see that white painted radio station in the middle of the field, and I can't help but to think that is the album cover for Raised on Radio from Journey. Steve Perry from Hanford. We're doing the Kevin Bacon thing.
Right.
We're from Hanford, and you actually, let's tell this story. It's true. I didn't believe you for a long time, but it's true, folks. My Aunt Sue had a Battle of the Bands experience with a young Steve Perry and his band, and she ended up winning that battle. Talk a little bit about that, man.
Okay, so actually, Steve went to Lemoore High. He'll say he's from Hanford, but he went to Lemoore High. And in my freshman year, I was in Lemoore High too. I was a bass player. I lived on the bass. And so when I was in the 8th grade in my freshman year, Steve's band, his very first band, was called the Invaders, and they used to practice in the garage at Dave Geffen house. And Dave Geffen was my first kiss. So my first kiss was Steve Perry's first drummer. How's that?
That is too cool, man.
Too funny. So yeah, so we, and so then how they grew in popularity, and there was a guy named Mel Seamus. He would put on dances at the Lemoore Civic Auditorium, which we thought was huge, but it's just so tiny now. It's so funny. But Melco dances were happening every weekend, and you were like, you had arrived if you made a Melco dance, let me tell you. And he would bring in some, pretty big names about every 3 months at the Tulare Auditorium and Hanford Civic Auditorium. But then every other time was Hanford Civic Auditorium, the Fraternal Hall or Lemoore Auditorium. But it was great. That's where we had to go to hang out, and the Invaders played, and then they became the Sullys. And through that time, I moved to Hanford. My girlfriend got a drum set. There was a band called... Dennis, he's going to shoot me now. Anyway, his band broke up. Lee Riders, that's what it was. They broke up, and they needed, so it was just him and John Grant, and they needed a drummer, so they asked Vicki to be their drummer, and she said, but my friend Sue, she's got to play in the band too. Well, what does she play? Nothing. Well, have her show up to practice. And so there was this Vox keyboard, and I would, back then it was like Louie, like Glora, Gloria. And then Iron Butterfly, the whole psychedelic sound was starting to evolve like then. And so we did, Frank Zappa and Iron Butterfly stuff. We just made a lot of good noise. And so I did the keyboard with my right hand, wrote the keys on the keyboard with my eyeliner, played mean old tambourine with my left. Got a big old bruise on my leg all week long. But we were playing, and we actually got to play at a Melco dance. That was like big stuff too. But they had a battle of the bands in the Civic Park one day, and the Sullys were playing, and our band became the Mixture. We got our name. We went to Eric Burden and the Animals concert a couple months before that, and we got invited to the after party. And we were talking to the road manager, Terry McVeigh, and it's like, we have this band, 2 guys and 2 girls, and we still don't know what the name is. And he goes, 2 blokes and 2 birds? Well, why not the Mixture? Well, because everybody was the something back then, right? So we became the Mixture, and so that's how we build ourselves. And my girlfriend's grandmother owned a drapery shop, Hickey's Draperies, and she made us these really cool, like, share pantsuits all the time. But this was a special event, so she made us these mini dresses. And since Vicky's on the drums, she had to have hot pants underneath them because the mini dress. And we wore white go-go boots and our silver lame mini dresses. And we rocked that Battle of the Bands. But I got to say, it had nothing to do with our mini dresses and my legs, okay? It was all our talent that won the show.
it was that tambourine, Aunt Sue. Man, she plays a hell of a tambourine, man.
Rock it up, baby, for sure. So for years to come at class reunions, we'd always say, remember when Vicki and Sue beat Steve at the Battle of the Bands? But yeah, but even after that, after graduation, I hung around Hanford for a minute before I hit the streets and hitchhiked all over California, did my hippie thing. But Steve and Dave used to show up. I had a little apartment of my own, and he used to show up in his Corvette, and we'd go on a beer run together, and they'd come back to my place, and it would be the party house, too. So, yeah, it's been a few years since we've said hi. But, yeah.
He, really, he had a great relationship with people locally, and recently when he came back and did his most recent album, was it Traces, I think it was? Most of the songs he wrote, you watch some of the videos on YouTube and the artwork and everything, you see the 99. It's just, he really felt like as he's coming back to music, he came home. And there's a lot of references locally to the Central California area in that.
Yeah, and some of those guys that he hung out with, they still have a little bit of a rift between them. I'm hoping that kind of healed some of it too, because one of those guys that was in Lee Riders, he went on to be a big writer, composer in Nashville, Ed Hill. And he's had a couple of hits that he's written for artists, country. I can't remember who they are now, but yeah, they've got some. I mean, they all come out of Hampton. Yeah, pretty good.
There must be something in the water. That's a local joke. That's a local joke. You have to be from here to know what we're talking about. It's like sulfur in the water or something. It's when, I grew up in it, taking baths, it smells like rotten eggs. And I'd be like, it's fine to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, huh?
Yeah. Grandpa used to say, that'll put hair on your chest. It's okay.
That's a good one.
Well, Aunt Sue, it's been awesome having you on Rock Stories with the Brumster, and thank you for taking us on these adventures with you. Thank you. That's the whole point of the show, right? To take
it's fun.
Folks on adventures. Yes, and you did a great job of transferring those memories over to me and our listeners here so that we get the chance to experience as well. That's awesome. We're going to have to let you go. It's at the end of the show. Folks, if you're interested in asking any more questions about how maybe you can get involved with Fans on the Run, it's not a club where you have to sign up for it, but at the same time, you have to be like-minded. If there is someone who's like-minded in mind, body, and spirit, loving Paul McCartney, the Beatles, and all things rock and roll, and loving people, and love being the centerpiece of that. All you need is love, right? So, how can folks get in touch and be a part of Fans on the Run if they are so inclined?
Easy. They have a Facebook page, so you can just join that one. As far as that goes, Ricky Glover Fans on the Run is two different ones. You're going to get the right one. But also, there's every year in Louisville, Kentucky, there's Abbey Road on the River. It's a 5-day Beatle Fest, and it's absolutely amazing. It's the next best thing going to London for their Beatle Fest, and I go there every year too. And I follow the Fab Four too because they're an excellent Beatle tribute band, and there's just so much. But yeah, I mean, my email is SueWeisenhouse@att.net. Hit me up. I'll, get you connected and make you part of the family. You can go rock with me. I'm always down for another road dog anytime.
Aunt Sue, Fans on the Run, the ultimate rock fan and the coolest aunt ever. I love it. Thank you for being on Rock Stories with the Brumster, Aunt Sue. Hang tight for our engineer.
Thank you.
We'll be right with you. Wow. That is the experience of a lifetime, folks. We get a chance to cruise along on all those different adventures. Hey, you never know what's going to happen next here. Rock Stories with the Brumster, every single Sunday, 11 a.m. Every single Sunday, 11 a.m. on rockradio559.com. And, of course, on demand, all of the past episodes, all of the past really cool behind-the-scenes rock stories from the fans' perspective at The Brumsters Spotify channel. That's 2 M's, BRUMMSTER, not one. If it was one, it would be an imposter. It would not be me, right? It is the Brumster Spotify channel, and every single week at rockradio559.com. Until next time, rock on.